I'm looking at the JP poll. I see the Buckeyes of Columbus at number 1, despite that tough loss in Eugene this past weekend. I think you were there. Lost by 1 in a hostile environment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that game. But some of our listeners, they're not familiar with the rankings versus ratings and the system that you use. Can you give us your justification for the Buckeyes being ranked number 1 this week in the JP poll?
Well, I think they should be 2, but who am I to argue with my model? So Ohio State still being ahead of Oregon ruffled a lot of feathers, but that's not even a matter of opinion. All I'm trying to do with that thing is neutral field favorability. So I just hit FanDuel up to get affirmation on it and said, what would you guys make this game neutral field? They said Ohio State still lays 2.5 against Oregon neutral field. So that settles that. Doesn't even matter what I think would happen in the game. As for Texas, Ohio State, the computer slightly had Ohio State above Texas. I would invert that, but otherwise, I know it's very in vogue this week to just like dunk on Ohio State and Ryan Day and whatnot. They went on the road and lost by a point to a consensus top 5 team. It's not the end of the world here. And I think in the aggregate, if that staff is worth its salt, they probably figured a lot of things out about themselves. And I mean, I don't know. I know how knee-jerk the reaction is in this sport. I did not look at that game that way. I thought both of them played at a level that should have been plenty good enough to win. It just so happens the other played at a pretty high level as well. I was on the field for that game, and I am telling the 3 of you and anyone else who wants to listen, I have been in all the venues that are 40,000 seats more than Autzen Stadium. There are maybe a handful of times at most my entire life that I remember being in a building with more juice than that place had. Ohio State plays in these huge cathedral venues every year. How many false starts did they have the other day? Like how rattled did they get at times in that second half? So I'm just saying, all I'm asking, and this is getting a little away from rankings versus ratings, but for the people who are selling their Ohio State stock and trying to call Ryan Day into question, all I'm asking is, can we see how the season ends? Like, can we at least watch the season play out? Because there's a world where this team still goes on to win the national title. Like they're not out of the picture or anything.
And the conference, which that's what we had. But hold on 1 second, though, because I pulled up FanDuel, which I don't always do because we use Bet Online here. But FanDuel right now has Texas as the favorite to win the national championship. So would that not put them at number 1 if we're just going off odds?
So what I do with that is not in direct conjunction with FanDuel. What I do is I put out numbers in the same spirit that an odds maker would. Now, there are instances, like notably the one you just mentioned, also Brigham Young, Florida. Those are some other teams that I have discrepancy with relative to whether it be BetUS, whether it be DraftKings, FanDuel, all of them would basically have the same numbers. So there are minor discrepancies there, but what we're trying to do is the same thing. I'm just trying to pump numbers out from this thing and how this model, which has been pretty reliable in the past, although people only want to point out when it loses, how this model would stack those teams up on a neutral field.
Gotcha.
But this thing has like Florida 24. Do you know this thing has Wisconsin back in the high teens?
Hey, they're a little dangerous now offensively, right? Longo got a couple, shots of Jim Beam behind him, rocking and rolling there. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Appreciate you guys hopping on here as usual, like you've heard on every YouTube channel of all time. Please hit that subscribe button. Helps out everybody, whether you agree or disagree. Hopefully, it's a little bit of both. We just appreciate you being here.